Hello everyone and welcome back to the 3T Path channel. My name is Giridhari and today I want to share with you some very interesting questions that one of you viewers sent to me, and I thought they were worthy of making a video and sharing with everyone, because doubts can really freeze up your spiritual progress. Doubts can stop you from dedicating yourself fully, or it can just completely make you give up. So spiritual doubts are very important and dangerous in a way for your spiritual life, so you have to address them as soon as possible. So here are the questions I got. Let me go through them carefully one by one. First question: what if it's not real? I mean, what if the whole spiritual thing here is not real? Like Krishna and Gita and Bhagavad Purana, it's all made up literature. So that's a very important question. Of course, that's a classic question, right? What if it's not real? What if, the Bible's wrong, the Puranas are wrong, all these spiritual texts, there's no such thing. They're all completely wrong. So how do we deal with that? I mean, remember that I used to be an atheist. I used to be a hardcore atheist. So, I mean, I've gone through this whole thing. I mean, I was there in the position where I thought everything was BS. And then I studied it and started making sense. So what is this process? How do you go from, okay, I'm just sitting here, how am I supposed to know if this stuff is real, to being fully committed to it like I am now, for example? Well, the thing is, you have to ask yourself, you have to be a little more philosophical. You have to say, wait a second, if it were real, you have to start asking yourself questions like that. If it were real, how would this information be available now? So that's a very interesting question. Like, what if God does exist? What would he have done that's different from what we are saying he's done? So that's a very good question, because then you don't have a very clear answer. Like, okay, wait a second, if God did exist, he'd probably come down and explain knowledge. Whoa, that's exactly what he did, and so that makes sense. And if this world is made for people to live out their illusions, we call it Maya in the yogic Vedic path, Maya. If this world, the whole material creation, is set up so that you can forget God, I mean, that is the purpose of this material creation. It's your chance to live out your egotistical fantasies, ignoring God. That's the setup. That's what the Vedas explain. So if that was the case, then obviously God can't just like slam, in your face all the time, here I am, and just showing up and strutting about all the time, and oh yeah, I'll prove it to you that I'm God, and all the time, lightning bolts. He can't do that, because that would break the very purpose of material reality. It would null it. It would void the very purpose of. So he can't be all over, in your face. But at the same time, he wouldn't just leave everyone in the dark, because then you'd never find out about God. Because if it's like a system made for you to not be able to directly experience God, then if he didn't do anything about it, you'd never know about God. You just wouldn't, it would just never happen. So there is a balance. So once in a while he'll come, the avatar concept from the Vedas, he'll come down, knowledge, he'll come down, show himself, leave knowledge, like Bhagavad Gita, Uddhava Gita. He'll leave knowledge behind. He'll come down once in a while. And then that's exactly what we have in the Puranas, the story of God once in a while, not just on planet Earth, but in different parts of the universe, in different times, throughout the ages. Not all the time, not every weekend, but once in a while he does come down and leave knowledge. So that makes sense. So you have to say, okay, that structure kind of makes sense to me. Then you have to ask yourself, okay, what about reality now, which makes me think that I need to go beyond just the stuff I get from modern science? Well, that's consciousness. That's just like, I think, therefore I am kind of thinking. Like, wait a second, what is going on here? I'm thinking, I'm feeling. So the very nature of my existence, of thinking and feeling things, makes me think, well, maybe there's something more than just matter, because the matter that I see and I study is dead matter. It's unconscious matter, like this chair is unconscious, this piece of paper, these things are unconscious, but I'm conscious. So there's this big thing here, consciousness and non-consciousness. And then, so where does this consciousness come from? What is it? You can't really, explain it. It's just like even if you go to the top neuroscientists, you can't really explain consciousness. So what is it? So that makes it worthwhile to search further. And then finally, I'm still in the first question, so I hope you guys have some patience with me. And then finally, like once you start the process laid out in Bhagavad Gita, then you get direct experience. It's very interesting. Krishna uses this exact term in Bhagavad Gita, chapter 9. He says, look, you're going to have pratyaksha, direct experience. Pratyaksha means like the same as like, oh, I'm looking at my hand. Pratyaksha, direct experience. So he uses that same term. He says, you're going to have pratyaksha in relation to the truth, to spirituality, to me. So you have this direct experience. So that's how I know it's real. Okay, that was a long one. Next question. What if the texts have been interpolated? This is a very good question. So I really like these questions. And that's what I wanted to share with you. So this is a very important question, and one that I certainly take very seriously. And I think we all should. All spiritualists, religionists should take it very seriously, because texts are interpolated. We know for a fact that texts get messed up with. It's not like there's some perfect magical system where, everything is preserved. No, of course not. Things get messed up with. It's just time. These are texts from hundreds, thousands of years ago. Of course they get messed up with. So yes, there is a lot of it. For example, the Mahabharata. Take the Mahabharata. In the Mahabharata, we have a spiritual master in our lineage way back, Madhava, way back 800 years ago. And he said, oh, the Mahabharata has been messed up with. And that was like 800 years ago. He was saying it was messed up. So imagine from like 800 years ago to now. So texts get messed up. So look, the Mahabharata, for example, there isn't, if you look academically, there isn't a critical edition. A critical edition means like where the academics, they try to find like, if I have all these different variants of this text, what's the original one? What's the thing we most are certain is like the original version of this? It's called a critical text. So with the Mahabharata, you don't get that. They just said, you can't get one. It's just, there's just too many variants. We can't really ascertain what was, overall, but I mean like the exact, what was no, we don't know what the original thing was. It's kind of lost. But, and this is why I focus all my work on a short number of texts: Bhagavad Gita, Bhagavad Purana, Yoga Sutras. I focus more on these three, and these three are very special. The Bhagavad Gita, for example, it's amazing. The Bhagavad Gita, even though it is part of the Mahabharata, it kind of stood apart from it and had its own because it was so important. There is no other version of Bhagavad Gita. There's only one Bhagavad Gita. This is really amazing. If you take like the gigantic, Asian subcontinent where this culture was being played out in, it's gigantic, it's huge, thousands of miles across, but there's one version of Bhagavad Gita. Again, with Mahabharata, you have a version in the north, one in the south, you have all these different variants. With Bhagavad Gita, there's just the one version that you have today. There is no other. We don't find like, oh, what about this one? Oh, this one's got 19 chapters. No, there's just one version. So that's very important. That's one of the very important things of the Bhagavad Gita, because it's only 700 verses. I mean, I've seen children memorize, modern children memorize 700 verses of the Bhagavad Gita. Because it's only 700 verses, you could mess around with it. If somebody said, oh, verse this, whoa, that's not the verse, like there'd be 3 people in the room saying, no, you nuts. And so that would, kept the Bhagavad Gita intact. So the Bhagavad Gita is intact. Bhagavad Purana, similarly intact. It's the supramost the Sanskrit literature, spiritual gem. It's just like an amazing text. If you don't know about it, at least you can follow my Uddhava Gita course, which I have on this channel as well. It's like a superb text. It's sort of it's like beyond the Bhagavad Gita. So it's an amazing text. And the Bhagavad Purana, again, we have commentary on it from about 900 years ago, 800 years ago. So we have commentary on it, and it's the same text. So they're commenting and everything they've commented, it's the same text. So it's preserved. We have this guaranteed that it's the same text. We don't have like all these different variations of it. That's very important too. And of course, Patanjali's Yoga Sutras, same thing. It's pretty much, it's the same text. There's no discussion. There's no issue, academically speaking, like, oh, which Yoga Sutras? No, it's just the one Yoga Sutras. So I stick to these three. And, other texts, other Puranas, I'm like, okay, I'll look at it, but let's see, maybe not. I don't take it at face value. Other passages from Mahabharata, it's like, okay, we can look at it, but, it's not like written in stone, I have a pinch of salt, I don't know. And I've seen other Puranas, and it's like, I don't know about this stuff. We have in our lineage spiritual masters commenting on other Puranas and citing verses which are not found today, just from medieval times till now. So we know that these other texts have been messed around with. But Bhagavad Purana, because it's so important, it's on a class of its own, it's so important. And Bhagavad Gita, because it's so important, they were preserved. And the Yoga Sutras, because it was sutra and it's so small, it was very nicely preserved. And it's also not as old, it's about 2,000 years old. So those are very well preserved. So I've done my research, do your own research, but I'm completely confident that Bhagavad Gita, Bhagavad Purana, and Yoga Sutras are bona fide texts that have not been messed around with. Oh, and of course, their content is just so perfect. It's so wonderful. Like, you can also judge by the very quality of the content. But that's not a great parameter, but it is there as well. Okay, question 3. What if we fail at spiritual life? That's a great question. And Arjuna asked that same question to Krishna in Bhagavad Gita. He had the same question. He says, Krishna, I'm going to do all this effort here. What if it doesn't work? What? He uses the example of a cloud. He says, it's like a cloud that just kind of disconnects and disappears, or like it didn't do anything. It didn't join. It just. So Krishna says, no, Arjuna, you will never lose this. So you never fail at spiritual life. Krishna gives this wonderful guarantee in Bhagavad Gita. He says, look, you never fail. Any progress you make, you keep the progress. You will continue in another life. If you stop in this life, you will continue. It doesn't end. It's not like your bank account in this life that you're going to lose, or everything, you conquered an empire and then you die and that's it. You lost your empire. You're going to take birth again, as a crying baby with nothing to your name. No, you lose. Not spiritual progress. It's always there. And that's why you see some people take to spirituality very easily, and others, start slowly. Others, like, as soon as they start, they're like at a high level, because we're starting from progress made in other lifetimes. 4. Why is there no mention of Radharani in Srimad Bhagvatam or Mahabharata? So this is a more advanced question. So of course, in the Krishna tradition, we worship Radha Krishna. Radharani, Rani means queen, so Queen Radha and Krishna, we worship the divine couple. That's the way, especially the Gaudiya Vaishnavism is practices with the worship of Radha and Krishna. But Radha isn't directly mentioned in Bhagavad Purana, and certainly not in Mahabharata. It wouldn't be mentioned in Mahabharata much, but it's not mentioned in the Bhagavad Purana, which is like the, where you find the whole story of Krishna. And there's like a fourth of the Bhagavad Purana is dedicated to the life of Krishna. Krishna's coming down 5,000 years ago. So why isn't Radharani mentioned? So the spiritual masters say that the speaker of the Bhagavad Purana Sutta And Shukadev Goswami Sutta is saying what Shukadev Goswami said. So Shukadev Goswami couldn't say Radharani because he would just get lost in ecstasy. Because if you study these texts, there's lots of ecstasy, there's lots of emotions. So, there's this aesthetic element to the tradition. It's all about emotions. And so at a certain level, just the name Radha, it just invokes like the highest rasa of Madhurya, Sringara rasa. So it's too much emotion. And he'd get lost. So he couldn't mention her name directly. Her presence is there, the person is there. You can see mention of this special gopi, it's there. So it's not that the whole thing is not, it's just the name doesn't come up. But the person, you can see Radha there in, alluded to, that principal gopi, that's called the principal gopi. So it's there in just a little indirectly, just the name isn't mentioned. But, it's also a confidential subject matter, so these things, are also usually kept a little hidden, So it's because of that, because of confidentiality, and because the speaker, Shukadev Goswami, would just get lost in ecstasy. And he had like a specific time, Parikshit Maharaj had 7 days to live. The guy was going to die. So Shuka didn't want to go off in a 2-day trance of, get lost in a 2-day emotional, ecstatic spiritual trance and leave Parikshit Maharaj hanging there, about to die. So that's what they say. Now, last question, 5. How do I deal with the pain of not seeing Krishna materially, which I guess it means like not seeing Krishna right in front of me? Is he really with us? Is he really with us all the time? So that pain is actually good pain. So the great spiritual masters, they talk about this pain of separation. So this love in separation is actually glorified as a great thing. So the more you pine for Krishna, the more you wish you could have Krishna in front of you, that is very wonderful. That's actually a wonderful spiritual sentiment. So if you're feeling like, there's so much pain and not being able to, that's wonderful. Go with it. Feel it, wallow in that pain of separation. That's very, very important, very sweet, very will advance you, purify your mind greatly. So go for it. And is he with us all the time? He is, and you can feel it. I can feel it. But it's just, he is philosophically, he says he is, he's in our heart, he's everywhere, everything is his energy. And also you can feel it as soon as you start advancing a bit, and you just feel it. You feel it in his name. He's present in his name, he says. I'm fully present in my name. He's present just in thinking of him. You're with him. So God has this absolute nature. It's part of the philosophy of yoga that God's name is non-different from God. It's a very important aspect of the holy name, the philosophy of the holy name that you have in the Vedas. It's different, for example, if I say, apple, it's not like having an actual apple. It won't do me anything saying apple. Or if I say, TV, TV is not going to show up in front of me. But with Krishna, the name is not different. It's so powerful. It's like a little special thing that God left in creation. Like, just say my name and you'll be with me fully. I'm fully present in my name. And this isn't just yoga, of course. This was kept in all the theistic traditions. What is the first thing that Jesus taught, in the Sermon on the Mount? Hallowed be thy name. Your name is holy. That's the first prayer. He's like teaching people how to pray. Like the first thing you say, hallowed be thy name. That's the very first thing that he's teaching. And then if you look at the Muslim tradition, you have, all that focus on the holy name, all right, of Allah. You can't have pictures of Allah, but you can have the name. So they have this beautiful script of the name everywhere. So this focus on the name. Of course, the Jewish tradition, what was the temple for? If you study the Bible, the temple of, Solomon's temple, the first temple of God outside of this Indian subcontinent, was a temple for the holy name. So the holy name, so God is always present with you through the holy name. This is, sonic form. as it were. And He's always, also in your heart and with you and around you and in your consciousness, so you can feel that too. Anyway, wonderful questions, right? I hope they helped you. I mean, I certainly loved going over them. And if you have questions, you should leave your questions below as well. And thank you very much for your time and your patience. Hare Krishna.